Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, everyone. Hope you're doing well on this beautiful Tuesday morning or afternoon. Sorry for the delay in starting. I had got caught up in a couple of things, but here we are, raucous like a hurricane. And where are we? We're on SOGIE. SOGIE. Part 2 of the SOGIE, Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity and Expression curriculum, or at least how you communicate these ideas to children through the presentation from the National SOGIE Center. For reference, the article that started me on this little inquiry is linked in the description below to a news site in Washington that mentions something about a SOGIE curriculum, along with a mandated LGBTQIA plus school rule or law now in that state. And I was curious as to what SOGIE was because I hadn't heard that before. And so last time, what did we learn? Well, we learned that apparently SOGIE really starts from the ages of 2 through 10, that outside parties, for reasons unexplained, have a duty and a right to interfere in the raising of other people's children regarding subjects that are none of their business, seemingly. Yeah, we hadn't even gotten to the actual presentation yet, because every time we got to a different section in the presentation that lasts an hour, we were told they'd be talking about those things later on when we get to the presentation. Like, okay, when do we get to that part? Not sure. But probably the most implicitly sinister thing was the, I'm going to say implication. The implication, after I said implicitly, because my words, that the family themselves of whatever child we're talking about, by default, should be considered a potential threat insofar as them resisting a declaration of gender outside of biology at a very young age, which was just about on that line. Also, the fact that our main speakers apparently believe that sex is assigned at birth, which always tells me a lot without saying a whole lot. But all of that bumbling aside, who's joining me on this ambush stream? I'll go through quickly. Noah Asensio, good morning. Genti Maxi, good morning. Super Mutant 2099, good morning. JB, good morning. Keeverdam, good morning. Kiro Soldier, good morning. Entiller the Mad, good morning. Who else is here? Samnamyol Nation, good morning. Simon Willikins, good morning. Robert Pincus, good morning. Misinformation, good morning. Attack Alpaca, good morning. Attorney Eris, good morning. And to anybody I missed, anybody lurking, anybody in the future, good morning. And before I begin, also a reminder, at the top of the chat box, I have a link up there to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society donation page. If you could, please consider donating there if you're able to. If not, that's fine, but if you can share that out on social media, I would appreciate it. Thank you so much in advance. Anyway, we left off last time with this card coming up, family rejection. So I'll let our speakers go on, and then we'll see what we have to say.
So I'm just briefly going to share a little bit of Family Acceptance Project work with you. They have some really, I think, beautiful memes that try to bring to life, I think, the emotional experience, the psychological experience of both rejecting and affirming behaviors. So this is just a little sample of that.
A little sample of memes about affirming and rejecting behaviors. So is that common? Is it just accusations and yelling? There's no questions or concerns? Family rejection. Family behaviors that reject child's LGBTQ identity and gender expression aim to change, prevent, deny, and minimize their LGBTQ identity and gender diversity. It could be, or it could be rational concern for declarations made by a still developing child about certainties on things they couldn't possibly be certain about at a very young age when they're still growing. But okay. Bullet points. These behaviors may be normalized, can be ongoing, and happen anywhere. The concerns of parents? Yeah, I'm sure they could happen everywhere. Most parents don't know these behaviors are harmful and increase health risks. Okay, you're going to have to give me some examples of behaviors. If you're talking about like outright abuse or something, then yeah, sure, there's no argument there. But what do you mean? Where's the line between reasonable, rational parental concern for their child and what you might classify as rejection slash abuse. And lastly, most parents see these behaviors as caring for their LGBTQ children. Well, are they not? Do you get to decide that they are not caring behaviors? But again, if your only example is the idea of violent verbal abuse, then maybe you have a point. I'm not sure. But is there a spectrum to this by any chance?
I think sometimes we think of rejecting behaviors as, very overt things, and certainly they can be, right?
Oh, we're not going to go into microaggression territory, are we? We can't even ask questions. Come on.
Right. Behaviors such as like kicking your child out of the home, physically harming, abusing them, because of their sexual orientation or gender identity.
Yes, those would be the most extremes, but how much more nuanced do you want to make family abuse?
Taking them to some kind of reparative therapy to change their identity. Like those are, I think, pretty easily identifiable rejecting behaviors.
Now let's tell us about subtlety.
But we also know that they exist on a spectrum.
Oh, a spectrum! Hey! Oh, you know what? I'm going to take advantage just because, I can. Yes, I had a brief psychic moment. Killer Turnus, God help me, this again. I have to finish it off. I have to know what else has to be said. Too curious, and other people asked that I continue it as well. So here we are. I already said this. Rock us like a hurricane. Thank you, Killer Turnus. And let's see. Mike R., good morning. And, oh, that's right. Killer Turnus, good morning to you. All right. So it's a spectrum.
Really, we're talking about any kind of behavior that overtly rejects or potentially tries to change, prevent, deny, minimize a child's LGBTQ identity and their.
So if I, as a parent, see my minor child start saying that they are something they are demonstrably not, me considering it simply a phase and ignoring it and not, I don't know, affirming it or anything, that's abuse? Is that what I am to understand?
Gender diversity. But the thing that's tricky is, again, some of these behaviors are kind of hiding in plain sight. They're often ways that parents and families are socialized to parent children. These are things that have been handed down intergenerationally.
Like an understanding of biological reality? Maybe.
They're very tied to cultural beliefs and values.
Sure. There's cultural beliefs and values. There's also just observable reality
around things like gender and what does gender expression look like, or what is it supposed to look like. And so a lot of times what I have found in my experience, and the research bears out, is that these behaviors come from a place of really good intent.
But of course we know the road to hell.
Parents view these behaviors as ways to help their child to fit in, to help them to belong, to help them to move around the world safely.
Or to reject somebody else's conditioning of them into nonsense. I wonder if our speakers ever allow for the possibility that simply because a child declares something to be so, that it's not so.
Without recognizing, without knowing that actually those behaviors are having the opposite of their intended effect. That children can in fact experience these behaviors as traumatizing, particularly when they're pervasive and they're happening in the home, in the extended family, in their faith communities, in their schools, and when they're not being kind of validated as harm, right? As harm that's being caused.
Okay, you guys have talked so far, and I'm talking rhetorically to our speakers who can't hear me, obviously, but you know what I mean. So far, the age range we have been focusing on is from 2 years old to 10 years old. Again, short of criminal abuse, none of this is your business.
And so again, the part of the importance of having these conversations in the first place is that if we don't ask, we don't really have any way of knowing if these things may be happening.
Okay, how do you have that conversation with a family? How does that go? Are you going to give us an example? And will it be at all a potentially adversarial example.
And so children may continue to suffer and experience those kinds of negative outcomes.
Okay, again, how do you insert yourselves into these family dynamics where you're policing what parents can or cannot say or do, or what kind of concern a parent may or may not express regarding their child? How does that happen?
On the flip side of that, family acceptance, right? Family Acceptance Project has done a lot of research, again, identifying both these rejecting behaviors, a list of over 50 of them, and over 50 accepting behaviors.
Oh, the Family Acceptance Project has a perspective, do they? I wonder what it is. The card says family acceptance. Many parents think they are accepting, but youth will say they never talk about or affirm their LGBTQ plus identity. Well, maybe because talking about sexual orientation and so on with their 2 to 10-year-old doesn't really come up that often. Or is there something else that we're supposed to be taking into consideration here? Number 2, families have a compelling impact on their GBTQ plus. I think they left off the L there. Children's health, mental health, and sense of future. Oh, really? They also have an impact just on a child's health, mental health, and sense of future. It doesn't matter what their purported orientation is. It's your support system as a growing child. If you can believe it, families have a compelling. Wow. Okay. And lastly, all families, including ethnically, racially, and religiously diverse families, can learn to support their LGBTQ plus children. Yes, because if you're ethnically, religiously, racially diverse, you don't have the capacity to tend to your own children or something. Okay. Anyway.
Something that's really interesting about family acceptance, and I think acceptance in general, is that a lot of parents, a lot of folks will say and feel like, I'm very accepting, I'm open-minded. But when you talk to the kids that are in their care, what they will say is, yeah, like I came out, but they've never brought it up again, right?
Right, because they're probably allowing the kid to figure it out for themselves and not affirm it or galvanize it. Right? Because if it is true, if it is absolutely true about them, why do they need it affirmed all the time? Seriously, why do you need to have something be affirmed to you all the time like that? If it's the way you feel as you develop, then it will continue to be the way you feel. And if it's not, if it's a phase, isn't there a danger that you could be compounding a problem by affirming something that operates outside of biological reality, or maybe influenced by outside forces or something? I don't affirm my, like, just as an example, I don't affirm my sister's sexual orientation on a regular basis. Somehow she's still straight. I'm not constantly interrogating her about her current activities in romance, but somehow she still likes men. I don't know what it is. If I didn't do that, obviously she'd stray from the path or something. What are you talking about?
Right? We never talk about my identity.
Your identity is your name. My identity.
They are really into, like, my siblings, going on dates and dances, but like I get nothing, right?
Well, are you going out on dates and dances? Okay.
There's that absence, and it's really important for families to know that those behaviors have a really compelling impact on their LGBTQ youth, and can lead to really positive outcomes and counteract some of those statistics that Johnny talked about in terms of depression, suicidality.
Okay, wait. What age group are we talking about here? You guys went from 2 to 10. You were talking about grade school kids. Now you're talking about dating and dances and everything else. How far along in their development are we talking about? You guys have not nailed down what age range of youth we are talking to, except for your chart earlier in the first part. That was from 2 years old to 10 years old. And that was like some kind of like target audience for this or something. Now we're into, I guess, teenage years or something. I wish they would make up their minds. I wish they'd be more specific.
Anxiety. Kids who have a high rate of, there's a lot of family accepting behaviors in their lives are more likely to be healthy, to be well, to not have those negative outcomes, and actually to be more successful in school and in their future lives.
You don't say, wow, a supportive family is helpful and healthy and everything else. Yeah. So does the family have to interrogate their children constantly about their sexual orientation to make that a healthy home? What I need an example. I need an example of what a family acceptance action behavior, whatever is, that our speakers think is necessary specifically for LGBTQ plus children. What specifically needs to be said or done by parents to have a positive impact outside of just being a loving family? Like what more needs to be done? I need an example.
It even impacts things like their future earning potential, right?
You don't say, okay, all of this is just boilerplate for healthy family relationships. It's got nothing specifically to do with the gender identity or sexual orientation of the child. What specifically needs to be done for the demographic you are so obsessed about? Specifically.
Right. So these are things that are important to parents, right? They want these things for their children. And so again, it's really important for us to initiate the conversation so that we can get to this place of increasing support and protective factors for these kids.
Okay. Do you, again, is the belief here that parents or families by default should be under suspicion of doing negative things to their child just because the child has in some way, shape, or form either actually or has been interpreted to declare themselves to be not straight in some way? Is what my brain hurts. They're dancing around. What are you supposed to do? How is this supposed to work so much? It's getting me a little dizzy.
We're a little behind schedule, so I'm going to keep this quick. One
good.
thing, one of the reasons that we spend a little time on the why piece is because we believe that you all have to have your own why. Because as you pointed out in the chat, like there's so much pushback in so many different ways from families, from state legislators, from national politicians.
Yeah, there is a lot of pushback depending on what you're talking about. Why is that? Do you want to give any examples of what the pushback is or how it's been articulated? Would you like to give an opposing argument to the pushback or to some common complaints or concerns? The fact that there is so much pushback, depending on how you're approaching this, might give you a clue that you need to give a better argument for what you're doing.
From community groups, caregivers, that it's really important that we normalize this practice.
Normalize what practice? Normalize this practice? What practice? SOGIE?
One of the things that does drive me in this work, and I hesitate to sort of name this because I feel like so much of our efforts to help and promote equity centers the experiences of those who are privileged and have power.
You have to name it. You already told us one of your first steps was the oops or whatever. Just name it. Come out and name it. If you got a problem, yo, I'll solve it. Check out the beat while the DJ revolves it. Name your what's your issue?
Plus community are the ones who create the culture of acceptance for those who are, right? And so normalizing this practice for all of the children that you care for and all of the caregivers.
Did I jump ahead or jump back? Sorry, I meant to jump back so I didn't cut him off. I think I might have gone too far. Hold on. Hold on. JB, holy cow. Thank you so much, JB. That's very, very generous of you. I have a friend who came out when he was 30 to his family. It was super difficult, yeah, but what are these people even talking about? These are kids they are targeting. It is really sickening, or really is sickening. Well, I don't know what we're talking about here. Between the chart that they gave us said they were focusing on 2 to 10-year-olds. Like this is the target range for having to intervene or something. And then they start talking about dating and dances and all that. And maybe I'm just old-fashioned, but I didn't think that stuff starts until around, say, 13, 14 into the teen years. And they're jumping all over the place and they're making it very vague and they're not giving us any specifics. And again, it seems to be that the underlying default is families and parents are enemies until they prove themselves not to be, or something. Or that being skeptical about a child's declaration about something and just letting it run its course without validating it or affirming it overtly or something is inherently a bad thing. Why not just treat the kid like a kid and let him live his life until he makes a decision for himself? Like, throw a party or something and say, hey, mom and dad, I'm something that doesn't align with my biology. Okay, dear. But what do they want to have happen? Do they want like an instantaneous Disneyland trip or something because some declaration or whatever? Again, I go back to the whole Superman thing. Mom, I put a cape on. I'm going to get up on the roof and jump off. I'm Superman now. No, there should be no concern. There should be no questions. Just default affirm. I don't know.
The reality, though, is that those who are not part of the LGBTQ plus community are the ones who create the culture of acceptance for those who are, right? And so normalizing this practice for all of the children that you care for and all of the caregivers that you interact with, whether their children identify as part of the LGBTQ community or not, that is what will create long-lasting change and support for this community.
Okay, I know I already asked this. What practice? What specifically are you talking about? What practice?
In particular. So that's part of my why as well. So we are going to...
I'm sorry, did I miss what his big revelation was? I must have clicked on the wrong thing. I apologize. I'll get back to the next card if I run into it again. I just want to make sure I didn't miss something important.
This quick one thing, one of the reasons that we spend a little time on the why piece is because we believe that you all have to have your own why. Because as you pointed out in the chat, like there's so much pushback in so many different ways from families, from state legislators, from national politicians, from community groups, caregivers, that it's really important that we normalize this practice. One of the things that does drive me in this work, and I hesitate to sort of name this because I feel like so much of our efforts to help and promote equity centers the experiences of those who are privileged and have power. The reality, though, is that those who are not part of the LGBTQ plus community are the ones who create the culture of acceptance for those who are, right?
Okay, so you're hesitating to say something because you're obviously privileged. Because in part one, as we know, you told us that you are inherently privileged as compared to your colleague because you're a cisgendered male. And so obviously you're more powerful than she is just by default. So yay patriarchy and, not at all sexist in any way, shape, or form. Actual misogyny. No, not at all. Okay. So those who are not part of the LGBTQ plus community create the culture of acceptance for those who are. So it's not a monolith. I don't know if you guys know this. LGBTQ plus is a mishmash of demographics, and it does not represent one line of thinking across the board. If you can believe it, each one of those letters actually expresses a different line of thinking about certain things. And you keep talking about that collection as though it were a collective and a monolith. It's not. A family dynamic is that family's dynamic. Might not be the same as another family's dynamic. You ever seen differences in senses of humor between families? It is quite striking sometimes to see how one family will behave amongst themselves and another family will, and one family's sense of humor would seem like completely inappropriate and vulgar to another, but is just how that family deals with things or shows their affection or whatever, like kidding and teasing and such, where another family is very strict and stalwart and all that. You do not have a panacea for whatever it is you're talking about. And I don't even know what this practice is yet. What are you talking about? And still, I ask, why is it any of your business?
And so normalizing this practice for all of the children that you care for and all of the caregivers that you interact with, whether their children identify as part of the LGBTQ community or not.
So if normalize this practice for kids that do not belong within the LGBTQ plus, what practice? What are you talking about?
That is what will create long-lasting change and support for this community in particular.
this, oh my God. Okay. I don't know.
So that's part of my why as well.
I guess. Okay.
So we are going to, I'm sorry, I was on the wrong slide. So we're going to just talk a little bit about what could make it challenging to engage in this practice.
What practice?
For the sake of time, if you've got some thoughts and some ideas and want to throw those in the chat, that would be great. But Antonia's going to launch into her explanation of what is typically some challenges that we face, and we're going to talk about how you can counteract those.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, all right. Okay. I'm hopeful. I've been asking for some examples of what the pushback looks like or what the difficulties are and how you address them in this, whatever it is. All right. So what are the challenges and how do you answer them? What are the problems and what are your solutions?
Yes, so definitely. So again, my background has been, I'm a clinical social worker. I've been a therapist with children, families. I've done a lot of group work. Aside from like the very start of my career when I was in graduate school and I was working as an HIV counselor, or a hotline counselor and an HIV test counselor at Gay Men's Health Crisis in New York City.
That's interesting curriculum vitae. All right, all that aside, let's get to the point, shall we?
That is the only time in my entire career that I've worked for an explicitly kind of LGBTQ organization.
Until now?
The entirety, like 20 years after that, has been working in various community mental health settings, child residential care, group homes for young people in foster care.
Okay, and this is relevant. Why?
I've worked in outpatient settings. I've worked in school settings. So none of these places are like where folks are specifically coming with this identified issue of my child is coming out, is exploring their identity. We are struggling with this, and we're really open to talking about it. Like that's explicitly why we're here. That's really not been the story of my career.
So you don't have much, if any, professional experience in the subject matter you're presenting us today. Are you just setting yourself up not to make excuses for something now? So with that as preamble, what?
In any of the places that I've worked. And so I wanted to name, in where I have been working, like here are some of the challenges that kind of come up when we start to do this work in these types of, kind of general community settings.
A lack of professional or academic experience in the subject matter, as you've just outlined to us. Okay, so not only is sex assigned at birth, but also, by the way, guys, the vast majority of my career has not had anything to do with what I'm here to educate you on today. Okay.
So I just want to name some of the common things. And again, please show up in the chat if you're if some of these resonate for you or you've experienced other things.
Okay.
So just some of the most common ones that come up. The child's not out to their parents and family.
They're not out to their parents and family. That's a challenge. Okay. Where... I'm going to ask again, where are, hypothetically, you, the person, the SOGIE person, where are you first interacting with the child that you would know this and the family would not? In what role are you, who is this for? I guess that's what I'm asking. Who is this for? Is this for teachers? Is this for social workers? Is this for Joe Schmo out on the street? Like, who is the person that represents this circle or the center thereof? I know I'm asking too many questions.
The child's not out to their parents and family. They're out to their therapist, to their provider, but are not out yet to their family.
Their therapist or their provider. You guys were talking about 2 to 10-year-olds. I mean, that's not to say that there haven't been children within that age range who have ended up having to go to therapy or something, but when I hear child, I am thinking less than 13 years old, right? Or less than, I don't know. About like 15, maybe 15 and less. Child, you start getting up into 16, you start talking about teenagers, right? Something like that. Because child always makes me think of like a kid that is still in grade school, at least still in grade school. So when you refer to somebody as a child, like not your teen, okay, so the child is not out to their family, but to their provider or to their therapist. Okay.
But their family's involved in care. The child is out maybe to me and maybe one other member of their treatment team, but they don't want to share. They're not out to anyone else and they don't want to share.
Treatment. Okay. I'm obviously missing something. Their treatment. What is the child in treatment for beforehand? Who is this webinar for? Is it for social workers? Did I miss that? Okay. What is, okay. This is, okay. UConn School of Social Work. Okay. So this is for social workers. Is that what this is? Because they were talking about educators. They were talking about teachers in the last part. Now we've moved on to this is specifically social workers. All right, so the center of this circle of challenges is a social worker. That is the role that we are talking about here. I'm going to assume until I'm told otherwise. Okay, so for some reason, a social worker is in this child's life for reasons we're not given any information about or any hypotheticals for. But okay, the child is not out to their family, but is out to their social worker. The child is out to only certain members of their treatment team, specifically you, the social worker. Okay.
Except we use a team-based approach to working with children and families. So how do we navigate that situation?
I don't know.
Navigated situations where caregivers and providers are using one particular name or pronouns, and that's different from what the child has expressed wanting, right?
The child. Listen to yourself.
What do I do when I'm together with these people? A lot of kind of switching back and forth with pronouns. And also just some challenges around, navigating identity. So
why would you want to affirm to a child improper English in the first place? The kid doesn't even have their vocabulary down yet to be able to express themselves in the world fully, and you want to start affirming incorrect grammar just because they say so. You're talking about children, correct? Impressionable, still developing, know-nothing children, correct?
Different from what the child has expressed wanting, right? What do I do when I'm together with these people? A lot of kind of switching back and forth with pronouns. And also just some challenges around, navigating identity. So how and when to disclose, making those decisions, empowering children to know when it's safe and when they're ready to do that.
Is this for the child or is this for you? Why don't you just let the kid be a kid? Where is it your responsibility as an outside party to intervene? And if it is, if you're a social worker and this is some kind of court mandated scenario or something, well, when is it your responsibility to do that? How is this any of your business? And if you're not, you just told us you are not trained for this. So who, oh my God.
Just navigating ongoing risk and safety concerns related to their identity and moving safely around the world.
Like what?
And navigating family rejection,
like what?
safety and recovery. And so this is a beautiful little diagram, and I'm going to mess it up because actually when we're in it, it feels a lot more like this. All of these things are kind of bumping up against each other.
That is literally chaos. For those of you just listening, you can't see the card on the screen. She has a circle of different little bubbles with these very abstract notions or something. And then she cuts to arrows connecting every single square to one another. And it's utter chaos. It looks like an occult symbol that has just appeared on the screen. I don't even know what to say. It's utter balderdash.
And what I will say is we are not going to offer you like a prescriptive, like, here's exactly what you do, because so much of that is based on where you're practicing, what kind of laws are on the books in your state.
So we're not here to tell you what to do. We're not going to give you a step-by-step thing. We're not going to give you specifics because, just whatever works for you. Well, whatever the law allows. Why are we here? Here's my why. My why is, why am I here? If I was actually a social worker, I'm just going to assume it's social workers, and I'm trying to get something beneficial from this, and every single card, every single image, every single example given is some kind of wobbly abstract with no real rule or definition to it, you know what that tells me? You got nothing. And if you got nothing, but you're talking about trying to alter or guide the fundamental, I don't know, even psychology of children that are not your children, I got to ask, are you qualified to even be in the room with a child?
What regulations guide your practice? What's your setting? What are your organizational policies and practices? So one, it's really important to be aware of those things. But also I kind of put this out there, as often I've certainly found myself, and I know of colleagues who have never really thought about what to do until they're in this situation.
What are you talking about? I've never really thought of what to do till I'm in the situation. Oh, you mean the situation where somehow you're there to intervene between a family and a child, between a child's declaration of something and a family's reaction, and you don't know what you're doing? Then maybe you should not be involved. If you haven't been trained for this, if you have no plan for this, if you have no list of steps to take in this, if you don't even know what your role would be in such a situation, maybe you don't belong there.
And that can be really anxiety inducing.
Yeah.
So it's more about wanting to encourage folks to have awareness, to think about how you would handle this in your practice, to talk with your colleagues, to talk with supervisors, to have a kind of a uniform approach. Right? This is such process-oriented work. It's not prescriptive, but we really want to say, like, these are things that we want folks to, be thinking about. We're going to offer you some best practices that can help you.
You're not. No. You're not offering any best practices. You just told us there is no list of things you can provide us. There's no what. Okay, what is the best practice?
Know how to approach this.
Approach what?
So we're going to do a little dramatization.
Okay.
I used to do theater together when we were teenagers.
Sure.
And so we're going to role play this. This is a version with someone who probably hasn't attended this webinar and is just trying to jump in feet first. So
okay, great. I finally, maybe, sort of, kind of, an example, a demonstration. Please walk me through it.
I'm going to play the father of a fourth grade child.
Fourth grade child. So 6, 7, 8. So like a 9-year-old, right? Am I right on that? I think like first grade is about 5 or 6. So an 8 or a 9-year-old. An 8 or a 9-year-old child. Okay.
Who has some behavioral health struggles, specifically depression, anxiety.
Your 8 or 9-year-old has depression and anxiety. Okay. What are you doing to this child in this home that they would have depression and anxiety at 8 or 9?
Again, very typical for this group and when they don't have the acceptance.
So you already know. Okay. I need to take a second here. So we're already saying that this 8 or 9-year-old falls within LGBTQIA plus or whatever. An 8 or 9-year, I'll just say 9-year-old. I'll just be generous. I'll be diplomatic and say a 9-year-old. So a 9-year-old, you already know that this child already knows something that fundamental about their sexuality. How did this come? You know what? I don't even want to know. Okay, fine. Somehow, some way, this child has expressed in a way that you've identified and now apparently accepted as a reality in some way, shape, or form. I either mentally or otherwise active in things that are probably inappropriate for outside parties to discuss with them. But okay. And because of this, they have depression and anxiety because you, the father, are not affirming whatever this child has said regarding. Okay. Just using the words in the same sentence makes me ill. Okay. I can hardly bring myself. It makes me sick just thinking about the idea of categorizing a 9-year-old in a sexually explicit way like that. It just
The child, Michael, is questioning and exploring identity, and Antonia is a clinician who has had some preliminary sessions with them. And
with that, you mean him? Oh wait, no, we can't say that, right? Why? I thought you're supposed to be playing the father who's not affirming things.
Antonia is the clinician and is meeting with me, the dad, to share some progress and updates and about get some information about how Michael's presenting at home.
How Michael is presenting at home. Okay, so wait a second. You have a dad of a 9-year-old, and this dad has their 9-year-old tell them something that defies biological reality, since you've just decided to go with neutral pronouns or something. And so this dad's first step is to take their child, wherever they received this information or is getting this idea, naturally or otherwise, or has somehow found the vocabulary to express this to you in a way that you understand what they're saying. Heaven knows where they got that information from. And so your first step is to take this child to Antonia, who already has a demonstrable and proven bias towards one direction, no pun intended, but I'll take it, of the argument, of the outcome, of how to treat children who make such claims. Really? Okay.
We invite you to, as you're watching this short little role play, put your thoughts and wonders, your questions that come up, your noticings into the chat.
Oh, I'm putting my thoughts, wonders, and questionings out there. I'm not there for the chat, unfortunately.
Again, this is the version of that folks haven't done the preparation that you're all doing today.
What? Oh, is this the role play part? Oh boy, are you ready, guys? Here comes the role play. We have Dad with the questioning. The questioning dad with the totally certain 9-year-old. And the therapist.
All right.
I'm going to take the slides down so you can just see us.
Oh, good. Okay.
All right. So thank you so much for making the time to have this check-in.
Okay, you're the therapist talking to the father that has taken his child to you to figure out what's going on. Okay.
I've had a few sessions with Michael, and I thought it would be a good idea just to check in about a few things.
Okay.
No problem. I just want him to get better.
I just want him to get better. Oh, is that a negative reinforcement? Is that going to be like, is that going to be something you have to correct in him?
Right. I want the same thing too. And in fact, they told me that during yesterday's session.
Oh, how many? Wait, I only gave you one child. I didn't give you more than one. How many children were you talking to?
Who told you that?
Yeah, exactly.
Michael.
But you said they. Who else told you that?
This is great. I mean, I should basically take over the role of the father in this.
Just Michael. They told me that they are using they pronouns.
Well, he's a 9-year-old and he's an idiot. I would say something like, "Why are you affirming non-reality to my child?"
What does that mean? You're just supposed to be helping him with his anxiety. Why are you talking to him about pronouns?
A very good question. That's very good. That's kind of what I would ask. Yeah. Okay. What's your response to that?
Oh, it's very natural for a child Michael's age to explore their gender identity.
No, it's not actually. All right. We're actually, I'm starting to learn quite a bit here. Okay.
Wait a minute. Why are you exploring gender identity with my kid? What?
Yeah, that's just, I don't even need to do anything now. I still have to break in for YouTube's sake, but heck, I'll just sit back for a bit.
What ideas are you putting in his head?
Oh, I'm just following their lead. Has Michael not talked to you about any of this yet?
No, and that's not the issue. You're not supposed to be talking to him about this stuff.
If they're exploring this aspect of identity, it could be part of what's leading to the depression and the anxiety.
It's okay. I have to break in occasionally, but okay.
I don't think this has anything to do with that. And I definitely don't want you talking to him about that stuff. So just focus on what you're supposed to do and make sure he gets the help he needs. Okay.
Oh, no. Oh, what are you going to say to that? What's the response to that? He's the parent. You're not. He's effectively, I would assume, paying you to see to his child's well-being, but not in areas that he's not comfortable with. And so your response is...
And scene.
What? No, wait, stop. That is not seen. What is your response to a parent that says this is not your responsibility? This is none of your business. Come on. You got to give us something.
So we'll pause there. And just want to invite folks, let me pull the slides back up. We want to kind of ask for your thoughts and reflections.
It sounded like a completely reasonable set of questions by a concerned parent. So I'm waiting. She said pause. Maybe they're going to pick it up again. But okay, what is your response to that pushback?
What did you see? Maybe you want to offer maybe what didn't go so well in this interaction.
What didn't go so well? You justifying your side of the quote-unquote argument. Even though this wasn't a debate, he was checking in with you on the health of his child, and you were spouting back a bunch of nonsense and affirming to his child things that he's not comfortable with you talking to him about, and you seem to have no problem with that. In fact, you seem to have done this without first checking with him before reverberating those ideas back to the child. This seems like you're about a day late and $1 short on communicating with the child's parent.
Well, we did get a good job on the role play.
Did you? I don't know. It seemed to end pretty quick there.
So naming, some anger and defensiveness.
I don't know that I heard anger so much as bewilderment and irritation. Defensiveness? Yeah, can you imagine being defensive for your child? I know, it's a crazy idea. What are your responses to those completely reasonable questions and concerns?
From dad, right? Instead of curiosity.
He was curious about what you were doing to help his child with depression and anxiety, which was your purpose. He was irritated about you stepping outside the boundaries of what he thought he had agreed to.
Confusion.
Yeah.
Michael's dad is terrified. He doesn't understand what's happening.
Yeah, he doesn't understand what's happening. Why are you talking to my child about gender identity and pronouns? He obviously was not informed about any of this before he decided to go and reaffirm to a child or put into a child's head things that shouldn't have been there in the first place. Because look at it from dad's point of view, okay? All of a sudden, this stranger, this professional stranger, starts telling him things about his child that make absolutely no sense either to reality or to his experience with his child. This temporary caretaker of his child starts dictating to him a new reality for his child. Do you think that there might be a reasonable and natural level of suspicion going on there? You think maybe a little bit?
Immediately want to pull back to something that he does understand.
Yeah. His child.
Yes, it's important to check with the youth about where they are in the process of coming out. Oh, now the chat is really rolling, right? So great observations, everyone.
Are they great observations? Are they? No sympathy for dad in this situation, given the circumstances? Huh. That seems to be a rolling theme in this practice.
Someone naming, right, that many have seen parents just kind of end the relationship, right, and move to another therapist. And that's something I think a lot about, always kind of erring on the side of engagement, which is really tricky to do in these situations where we're navigating confidentiality.
Maybe you should err on the side of caution, first and foremost, because it's not your child. And the father has far more rights to the care of the child than your particular agenda. Or do you know that?
Right. I should have been aware, right? I basically outed Michael to their dad with
A 9-year-old. You did okay. You didn't even approach it as the child has said some things. You were just telling the father that this is the way it is. All right. So are we going to get like a follow-up, a more, softer side of Sears kind of approach to the whole thing?
without even knowing if this was on dad's radar at all. So I really kind of sprung this on them.
On him. The dad is a him. He's a father. It's a him, not them.
Yeah, could there have been a better way not to out, right? Michael should have given permission to discuss. So a lot of folks naming that outing. So we're glad that folks are recognizing that, right? When we think about like, how does this impact the relationship, between the therapist and Michael's father?
Well, in this instance, I would definitely fire you. Or like I say, do you have a better scenario? Are you going to give us a second round at this?
Is this father going to feel comfortable bringing their child back to treatment?
Not with you, I would think.
With me or with anyone?
Well, certainly not with you or anybody you're associated with at that point. At least I wouldn't.
Potentially after this, right? We
Yeah.
want to like continue to foster like the most trusting, transparent relationship we have.
The most the most trusting, transparent relationship you have. How was the previous scenario not as transparent as glass as to your intentions and the information you'd heard from the child purportedly? That was transparent. That was totally transparent. That was blunt. So is the next example going to be more filtered, more nuanced, thus less transparent?
And so there were a lot of missteps that were made. And so now we're going to kind of flow into like, what are some things that, perhaps I could have done a little bit differently as a clinician?
I don't know.
So I'm just going to go ahead and jump into some of the best practice in terms of like, there's a lot of preparation in terms of having these conversations.
Is there? And all of this is predicated on you, the therapist, the social worker, the teacher, because you guys were talking about students and things earlier. This is all predicated on you having some very intimate knowledge of the goings-on in a child, in a 9-year-old. That you have somehow been gifted this information or have elicited it from a child ahead of their own family. And I used there appropriately because the child could be either male or female.
And so we want to pull folks' attention to this. So kind of thinking first about the planning phase. Where's my animation? Great. Okay, so one is that, we want to ask these questions of sexual orientation and gender identity of all youth and ideally caregivers as well.
What business is it of yours? How does that conversation go, I wonder? How do you initiate that conversation with a 9-year-old? I don't want to have to imagine that scenario. I really don't, but they're forcing me to because this is apparently something that is going to be instituted, at least by one example, in Washington State, per the article linked in the description. So is it, and so in that case, how does a public school teacher engage with their students in inquiring of them their sexual orientation and or gender identity and or expression up through the age of 10? How does that conversation go? What does that plan look like, might I ask?
This is something that we should be asking all of the youth and families in our care. And as part of that, really getting familiar, building our confidence and acuity using different kind of culturally and developmentally attuned language and terms. So thinking about the populations that you're working with and
Oh, okay. Give us an example. What are some culturally or developmentally appropriate language to inquire of a 9-year-old their sexual orientation?
do you have ways of asking these questions that are going to be accessible, that people will know what you're talking about?
Yeah.
And so also, I think when in doubt, use gender neutral language, right? So familiarizing yourself, getting comfortable with that, using, I often do use they, them, or use people's names.
Oh, their names? Oh, heaven forfend. You actually use their demonstrable identity. Oh, okay. But yeah, so just until you know for sure, just kind of walk on eggshells and talk like absolute nonsense out of good God. Okay.
Until I know more. That's also, I think, if a child has disclosed their identity to me.
Why would a child disclose their
but hasn't yet with the parent? I will use the child's name to avoid using pronouns sometimes, particularly when I'm meeting together and I don't want to misgender the child, but I also don't want to out them or, endanger the relationship that I have with the parent.
This is so insane.
When we introduce these things, right? So we want to have transparency and open conversation.
But you don't want to be as blunt and open as you were in your role play example. So which is it?
I think it's really important that we let folks know about confidentiality before we ask the questions versus asking them and then saying, oh, now I'm going to have to tell. Now I'm going to have to do something with this information that you weren't even aware of.
I'm still at a loss to understand what dynamic, what role are we talking about here? What scenario is this going to come up? Because again, in the first part, they mentioned caregivers, they mentioned teachers. We're not talking about social workers and therapists and on and on and on and on and on. And this is supposed to apply to anybody? Now, at least for the sake of this overall presentation and these streams that I'm doing, I'm thinking about it in terms of public school teachers, because that's where I first heard the term. And so if this is the practice for SOGIE, I'm just going to, from here on out, I'm just going to, for the sake of argument, we're talking about conversations between public school teachers and their students. Okay, so let's just frame it like that. Whatever the speakers are talking about, beside the point. This is apparently a recommended process for this, which applies to anybody in a position that oversees children. And so I ask again, when and in what way do you engage with a child on this subject? Why would you do so? What business is it of yours? And if you have to, for some ungodly reason, how does that conversation go with the proverbial 9-year-old?
That harms our relationship. That's unsafe. So we want to communicate those confidentiality policies together and also talk about the limitations. So that's like things like age, right? In New York State, I know that children have the right to confidentiality about their reproductive health care, which can include things like gender identity, sexual activity at the age of 14.
Okay. At the age of 14. That's disturbing in and of itself, but okay. But you were talking about 9-year-olds.
It's really important to say that to children and families together so that everyone is aware of that, right?
No. You brought up a 4th grader. Explain how this works, given the example you gave, not in the laws of New York State for teenagers. What?
As they enter into the relationships, we want people to make informed choices.
What?
We want to talk about why and how we ask SOGIE questions.
No, I really want you to focus on that one.
And that doesn't mean saying, oh, they make me ask this about everyone, sorry.
Oh, so you're really, really excited to interrogate young children about these things?
right? But to say, like, it's real, this is an important part of who you are.
Yeah, and how I don't know how much more I can take of this. Honestly, I might have to do a part 3. I'm I'm running out of gas, guys.
This is a space where you can talk about those things. There may be things that are happening in your life that are impacting you, that are connected to your identity. So we make a practice of asking those questions of everyone. That's why, right? It promotes safety.
Does it?
And then we want to have a practice of, we talk about confidentiality together, but then we ask the questions separately, right? And that's to promote safety and confidentiality, and to be able to explore and ask those questions of who else might you be out to?
Who else might you be out to? That might be the first example of a question actually purportedly asked in this process. We haven't even got any specifics yet. Who else might you be out to?
Right? Is this okay to share with other members of the treatment team? Is this okay to share with your family?
Team.
We always want to be mindful, especially if this is new to us, if we're feeling some of that anxiety around, I don't want to make a mistake, I don't want to harm. Do your best to stay relaxed, be mindful of your nonverbal communication. I think a lot about how queer youth are kind of, their expectations of us, in our roles, in our systems, might not be the most trustworthy one. They may be expecting something negative. And so they may be interpreting, kind of my discomfort as.
So you're being a mind reader of children again?
As rejection. So I'm really attentive to my body, my facial expression. I'm really open in these conversations. I want to hear more about family values and belief systems, because
I bet you do, and how to overcome them to push forward your agenda.
those things are so closely connected and impacting that child. And I want to provide validation and psychoeducation as needed. So,
even though, as you told us, nothing in your professional experience prior to this prepared you for anything that we're talking about here.
Sometimes these conversations are very straightforward. We move through them, and sometimes they expand, right? And there's, you're sensing, you're picking up on things that are going on, and you want to say a little bit more.
What?
Some guidelines around managing confidentiality. If a youth hasn't come out to their parent yet, I want to find out why, right?
I'm still trying to figure out, in what circumstance are you aware of what's going on with this child, this 9-year-old? You guys brought up the 4th grader. If this is supposed to be something you can comfortably talk to a 4th grader about, then that's what we're going to use as our example. Oh God, this is making me ill.
That doesn't mean we're never touching it again. I can never talk about it, right? This is ongoing work. So I want to explore what might be the risks of sharing. Right? Maybe this child has a very well-founded fear. They've heard their parents say, if you ever, say that you're this, like, no child of mine is going to be, you can't live under this roof. Like, that would be very concerning for a child. That's probably a smart decision that they've made for their safety.
Okay. There's always a kernel of truth in some of these things, right? I mean, the scenario of having a strictly religious family and so on, who has very, very religiously based or culturally based values when it comes to sexuality or relationships or whatever else, sure, it's going to be difficult. But 9-year-olds, I keep coming back to this because I'm just like, okay.
What do we know about, right, the parents' knowledge, their attitude, their behaviors related to their child's sexual orientation and gender identity?
And what business is it of yours to intervene?
Have they been picking up on things and dissuading them from behaving, acting, dressing in a certain way?
It's entirely possible. What business is it of yours?
Have they been validating and accepting?
What if validating and accepting is the unhealthy move?
I think it's really helpful with kids to explore, like, what might be the benefits of sharing. If they're living with a lot of stress around keeping a secret, like, letting go of that secret can be a really powerful thing. And I'm just going to validate any concerns that they have. If they're out, or if they agree to share with a parent, I'm going to...
Wait. Explore and validate concern. There are no questions, no skepticism. No, just letting the kid figure out some things for themselves. I mean, if they're in some kind of like abusive situation in their household, that's a completely separate situation. That's a different situation altogether. I have far too many questions.
Keep doing some assessment around rejecting and accepting behaviors, and provide some psychoeducation, and just continue to explore and validate concerns. Just a couple of key principles for engaging children and families. Again, we want to just really start. This is truly about like starting where meeting people where they are at.
Meeting people where they are at. How could you ever do otherwise? I always love when I hear that phrase. I'm just like, we meet you where you're at. Like, well, how else would you do it?
But we want to hold on to the belief, because families are coming with a whole history of experiences and intergenerational beliefs and values, right?
Which have nothing to do with you, and you are an interloper.
Right. But it's really important that we have hope and that we believe that all families can learn to support their children when we are providing that culturally relevant guidance.
And so again, by default, you assume that families are being implicitly or explicitly abusive or oppressive to their children if you've decided that a child is within this demographic, or the child has made some sort of indication, subtly or otherwise, that they think they might be in this demographic as a 9-year-old. Okay.
But we always want to be inclusive and respectful of children's identities. That is a very important part of providing any kind of trauma-informed care or support. And really, again, this is a collaborative experience between the practitioner and the caregiver and the child. We're not leaving anyone out, and we're really valuing and respecting everyone's place at the table.
Are you? Because it sure feels like you're leaving the family out of a lot of this. Sure, it certainly feels like you are encircling children within your arms and protecting them from their families, or setting up a sort of ally and enemy dynamic between you being the good person and the family being the opposition. Maybe that's just me.
These are, again, some values that I think about going into these conversations, again, from the...
What? No, you did not. I didn't even realize the Family Acceptance Project, or FAP. Are you kidding me? No, okay, I'm done. I am done. I can't. I just cannot. I'm done. Maybe I'll do a part 3 or something. I can't. I can't do it. I just can't. I'm sorry, guys. My threshold tolerance for this particular line of inquiry is just obviously limited. My frustration, my bewilderment, my reflexive, anger, really just does not align with going through this anymore for today. So maybe I'll do a part 3 tomorrow to wrap this up once I've calmed down some. Because it's not just the subject matter itself, which is, infuriating and just all by its lonesome. It's also just the absolute absence of specificity. We keep talking around in circles about what is it you're talking about? Give me an example. How is this supposed to work? And on and on and on. I was really hopeful for the whole role play thing, but that just sort of like did nothing else but to affirm, there are some seriously good questions that your partner asked in this whole scenario, and you didn't end up answering. So I'm gonna stop at that acronym. Okay. So I will. I'm gonna stop it here, guys. I'm gonna go have some lunch. I'm gonna do some more work for the day. Try to take my mind off of this until I will finish this up. I will wrap this up in the near future, whether it's tomorrow or maybe Friday after TED Excellence. TED Excellence is on Thursday, so Friday. So I will let you know. I will notify. Apologies for my constant stoppings and grumblings. I just couldn't. This is as far as I could go. Thank you, Keeverdam, for the lovely, happy, caring dog cat fox. Oh, dog cat.
Wowie, wow, wow.
And there's a Kiever Dam Dog Cat Fox, appropriate enough. All right, so keep an eye on my Twitter, that is X, whatever, scribe_light. I will notify when I have part 3 ready to go, and hopefully without too much delay, unlike today. Or you can also find out on the Discord server. Did you know I have a Discord server? I'm totally not buying time so I can prepare a Discord server link to put into the chat right now. So there's a Discord server link in the chat. You just have to click on that. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you actually watched the stream, are not a bot, and have earned the right, the privilege, and the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is them. Just say hello, them, and I'll know that you watched the show. And you can become a member of the Discord server. Beyond that, you can find me here every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence, where I'll take a look at an off-brand TED Talk with TEDx Bingo for education and enlightenment. I call it a distraction from everyday life, as is most entertainment. I'm not quite sure if this particular stream was entertainment or kind of like weird education, but either way, there you are. Everyone, appreciate you guys coming out today. Moderators, what coming out today in the attending the event sense. You can come out the other way if you'd like. I'm not judgmental. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, link at the top of the chat box. Thank you guys so much for your generosity. Apologies for not getting to more of you comments and otherwise. Leave them in the comments after the stream's posted. If I missed it, I just got to take a step away, take a break, do some other things. Hope you all have a good rest of your Tuesday and the rest of your week ahead of time. Hope you're all safe and well. If you are not well, please do get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.